Welcome back to the Drunken Odyssey Academy, your totally free and, more importantly, totally unaccredited Master of Fine Art program in creative writing. Today's lesson: how to beat writer's block. Here I need to offer a disclaimer. I'm defining writer's block as what happens when you sit down to write and nothing happens, even though you are sufficiently rested, sufficiently healthy, sufficiently sane. If you've got medical situations happening or are just too exhausted, the lessons I have for you probably aren't going to work. So writer's block for me is what happens when you simply can't get the writing done, even though you can't find a good reason. So the way to avoid writer's block is to not get it. Thank you for watching this video. Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button. If you would like to support us over at Patreon, you can go to...
John, you actually have to say things. There has to be content to this. Can you write a listicle or something?
Okay. 1. Generate many more ideas than you need. If you're not working on a specific project, but you've scheduled time to write and you have the time to write in, what you can do is simply generate premises. Let me define what I mean by a story premise, and this is for fiction writers out there. The foundation of a story is going to be a very simple formula. Name of character urgently wants blank, and whatever goes in that blank needs to be an urgent goal that is external and objective. Which is to say, the audience shouldn't be scratching its head over how the story turned out for the protagonist. Now, there are certain ways to complicate that in the telling, but we really want to know, did the person accomplish the goal or not? If you've scheduled an hour to write, or you've decided to steal an hour to write in, you can spend 10 minutes coming up with 20 different story ideas. Sometimes trying to come up with the perfect story idea and just willing one idea onto the page doesn't really work, whereas if you just generate 20, you generate a lot of options that may work, including the further down you go in that list of 20. At least for me, they tend to get crazier, and those sometimes turn out to be the most exciting projects to work on. So, when in doubt, generate many more ideas than you need. 2. Bank your ideas. When you're going about your business for the day, sometimes an interesting word or sentence or paragraph or dialogue or parts of a poem or images may occur to you. Experienced writers write those ideas down as soon as possible. So writers tend to keep journals on hand. This one's a little on the big side for me. Let's see. Here's a journal that was given to me by one of my mentors, Chuck Wachtel. He's no longer speaking to me. But I am proud to own this notebook. And I think he actually gave me 2 over the years. So I've used one. I'm still saving this one. And this one's a little too nice. This was given to me by Chuck Palahniuk. It's got this lovely kind of punk rock illustration of him. And yeah, he wrote down a place where John can put his worries, Chuck P. Obviously, I cherish this one too much. Here's a Moleskine notebook. And let's see. Yeah, I didn't get very far in filling out this one. It's really important, I think, that you not have a precious notebook on your person to write down your ideas. In fact, when I interviewed Daniel Handler, he was so proud of the journal that he had. He had been using it about a week and it was already falling apart. So my preference is actually for 3x5 index cards. I think it's as unpretentious as can be, and the upside for me is that gives me that day to take that idea that's on the index card and stow it away either in, a Microsoft Word document or maybe on a legal pad. I've been using legal pads lately. But just write down what ideas you have, because when you sit down with an idea, getting into the writing is a lot easier than if you're just looking at a blank screen or if you're looking at a blank page. So bank your ideas. That is your subconscious giving you free writing. Always write that down. Always write that down. Park the car and write that down. 3, let the work be bad. I cannot stress this enough. If you're a new writer, you may very well be putting a lot of pressure on yourself and expecting the work to be great, needing the work to be great. And I will say that that impulse for excellence, to push yourself to not settle for less, that is an okay instinct, but not when writing a draft, not when sitting down to write. When it comes to revision, and especially when it comes to editing, that is when the perfectionist in you should be unleashed, because at that point, the perfectionist in you can actually help and do real good. Until then, tell your perfectionist to shut the fuck up and sit in the back seat. You have writing to do. The writing doesn't need to be good. And if the writing turns out to be disappointing, that too can be helpful. Last year, I worked on a screenplay, and I got to the moment right in the climax where the protagonist is having a moment of awareness. How do I get out of this horrible predicament I've gotten myself into? And I wrote that part. I didn't like what I wrote. And about 10 hours later, I revised that scene and then finished the screenplay in one sitting. So when you're sitting down to write, let the work be bad. It may be temporarily bad. It may not be bad at all, but part of you wants to believe it's bad. Either way, don't let that get in the way of creating. 4, plot your stories. This is especially true of long-form storytelling. When you have a long way to go and you wake up in the morning, and if you're not a morning person, I am not a morning person, despite what my mentor Jonathan Lethem told me. I hate mornings. However, Jonathan Lethem pressured me to get up and get my writing done instead of, going to class and bitching about not getting my writing done. And because I had my story plotted, even if some of it was, not my strongest prose, I ended up being able to write a novel while I was working several jobs and dealing with interesting and difficult hardships in my personal life. But I got up early, and if I was simply waking up with kind of a headache, trying to get going for the day, and managed to, get to the desk, knowing where I needed to go next with the story helped immensely. And if you're wary of story structure because you feel like it's too constraining, well, I had plenty of surprises in the storytelling. So maybe don't worry so much about that. 5, observe the time. So if you're a writer and you need to get writing done, whether that's an emotional need or, deadlines and whatnot, you really need to schedule and plan that time, even if that time is awkward. And you also need to settle in. If you sit down to write and nothing seems to be happening, don't freak out. Don't get angry at yourself. Observe the time. Respect yourself and respect the time that you're putting in. And if your brain isn't doing anything, and you haven't been able to provoke your mind into doing anything, give it some time. Give it some time. You may be surprised what seemed like a whole lot of nothing. Once your brain gets that first step, you may end up being really productive. And you won't know that if you're too busy freaking out over the nothing happening. 6. Don't stare at a screen for more than 15 minutes. If you've been observing the time and the time continues to persist in nothing, sometimes getting some movement helps. For me in particular, taking walks. If I am trying to solve a problem, if I am really trying to figure out the next part of my story and I feel stuck, if I take a walk without even trying to solve that problem, my brain just pops up with a solution that feels surprising and yet appropriate. Even if it's a 2-minute walk around the house, get your body moving. Sometimes that will get your brain moving. Lastly, 7, reduce distractions. If you have alerts on your phone that are going to go off, if you have social media at your fingertips on your computer, well, take those windows down while you are trying to get your writing done. When I'm in a particularly ornery mood, I get my typewriter out and actually type on a typewriter, which you may be surprised to know has no social media applications on it. For me, reducing distractions means I have to listen to music since this ear has been ringing since about 1988. So I tend to listen with earbuds in, and I like to listen to instrumental music that might be on a little bit of the louder side, which is to say, not classical music usually, unless the classical music doesn't get awfully quiet at parts. So symphonies tend to have this broad range of volumes, and that really actually distracts me when I'm trying to write. Also, classical music may be too good to listen to while I am trying to write. So those are my hacks for how to avoid getting writer's block. I'm of the firm opinion serious writers don't get writer's block, or at least not for long. Hopefully you find these tips helpful, and if you think I've ignored any really important tips and want to share them, please leave them in the comments below. This is John King. I'll see you next time.